Hello, my name is Luisangel Osorio from OG High School. Well, today I'm going to speak about the American romanticization of World War II and the American condemnation of wars after it. Post World War II wars are more condemned than media. Well, when one thinks about World War II, one thinks about the glory, one thinks about the morality of it. It was a war against fascism. It was a war in which many countries, many good countries, teamed up against fascist, evil men. It's a war that is drawn with a fine line. Black, white. Black being the Axis powers and white being the Allies. It's a clear-cut war in many perspectives. When one thinks about World War II, no one thinks about the bombings of Hiroshima. No one thinks about the bombings of Nagasaki. No one thinks about the firebombs that killed many Japanese. No one thinks about the innocent Germans who died in the war. No one thinks about the rape that happened by the Allies to the Axis powers. What everyone thinks about is the glory that the soldiers brought to them. Now, when one thinks about World War II, one thinks about the liberation of the world. One thinks about the success and glory of the war. Well, this is what I've noticed in media. One day I was sitting there playing Call of Duty, World at War, and I noticed something. My protagonist was never in any way deemed negative. He was never shown in a negative light. It was only in a positive light that he was shown. In no way was he deemed a rapist. No, in no way was he deemed a killer. He seemed like a man who was fighting for the good of his country. Now, where does this originate? Well, this originates from a plethora of ideals. Well, for one, as I mentioned earlier, World War II was a war in which, democracy, which is very, popular now, fought against fascism and won, showing a type of fight of ideology, the Western ideology of freedom. To add on to that, is another reason why World War II is so glorified in media is post-World War II economic success. Now, after World War II and before World War II, to mention, before World War II, the United States was in a huge depression. People were poor. People were struggling to get food. People were getting lines that stretched blocks for bread. But after World War II, and after the factories came in, and after everyone started working, it was nothing but economic success. Nothing but economic success. America was in its glory days, in its golden days. But here's the thing. Here's the reason why we shouldn't glorify World War II. In many aspects of World War II, it is a good war in that, fascism was, destroyed. Nazis were destroyed, and I highly doubt anyone would want Nazis to still exist in a liberal world. Well, in World War II, many people were raped. Many people were killed. Although we did fight against fascism, although we did win the war, we should not glorify it in any way. War is war. War is hell. In any war, people die. In any war, there's sadness. There are innocents getting killed by both sides. War should not be glorified in any sense of that word. What this leads to is over-patriotism, which allows one to completely conform to the country's agenda, whether that be a good thing or a bad thing. It allows one to fully follow the agenda of their country. For example, post 9/11, patriotism. when Al Qaeda attacked the Twin Towers, the American public wanted nothing but war. They wanted nothing but revenge. And what did that lead to? It led to great tension in the Middle East. It led to many innocent Middle Eastern people to be killed by American soldiers. This is a danger of over patriotism. Now, when one thinks about the Vietnam War, one does not think of it in the same context that they think about World War II. No one thinks about the glory of Vietnam. No one thinks how these soldiers are heroes. In the 70s, people thought these Vietnam War vets were actually villains who would conform to the country's agenda. Now, why is Vietnam so condemned? Why do people think Vietnam was such a terrible war? And why do people not want to talk about it? Why is it portrayed so badly in media, such as movies? Because in movies, the Vietnam War vet or the Vietnam War soldier is treated as a psychopath who wants nothing but to kill and rape innocent Vietnamese soldiers and Vietnamese women. Well, in the 70s, the Pentagon Papers came out in which Nixon was shown to be very corrupt. A distrust in government happened because of the Pentagon Papers being released. Not only this, but the American public did not know why the American soldiers were there. They knew that Vietnam soldiers were being killed. They knew that American forces were being killed, but no one knew why we were there. No one knew why. But what people did know is that we wanted to spread our democratic ideals. People started to realize that this war was a war for idealism. It was essentially a war for American imperialism. Now, when one thinks about wars in the Middle East, the war on terror, no one thinks about the glory of it. No one believes that it's a good war. No one believes that we're doing the right thing, with the exception of post 9/11, desire for Al Qaeda's blood. When one thinks about Iraq and Afghanistan, they think about the torn soldier, the soldier who has PTSD when he comes home, the soldier who has to kill innocents at the Middle East. No one thinks about the innocence of the soldier. No one thinks about how the soldier is, essentially a hero. The war hero is dead with Vietnam and Iraq. There is no sense of the war hero. Now, why is this? Well, quite simply, the Middle Eastern wars that America is in are essentially America being a bully, and everyone recognizes that. Everyone has learned a lesson from Vietnam. Everyone notices that this is essentially American imperialism. Everyone knows that, we're looking for WMDs, but there are no WMDs. People want revenge, but realize that we're hurting innocent people along the process. Because of this, there is no war hero anymore, not to the extent of post-World War II era. Well, in the post-World War II era, Hollywood, for example, showed nothing but the war hero, nothing but the man who comes home, takes care of his wife, takes care of his family, also who fought in the war and should be respected, should be glorified. Now, here's a danger of glorifying World War II. Here's the dangers of condemning, the Iraq War and the Vietnam War. When we condemn a war, we essentially condemn our country's decisions. While that might be a good thing, and it's always a good thing to be wary of what one's country is doing, the world is not a safe place. Well, while we are in an era of peace and relative to like the rest of the human history, war can always take place. As I speak, we're slowly running out of resources. We're slowly running out of oil. We are slowly running out of food. Eventually, there is going to be a war, as human history has shown Eras are defined by the wars. Eras are defined by what countries were defeated, what countries stayed. Eras are known for what countries are victorious. Eventually, and while this might not be in my lifetime, or my children's lifetime, there is going to be a war, whether it be World War III or war between two countries. There will be a war. It's human nature, as Hobbes would agree. Why we need to have a sense of patriotism is important. We need to have a sense of patriotism because if we don't, we essentially allow ourselves to be stepped on. While it's important to be wary of one's government, while it's important to condemn wars, it is very important, it is vital to ensure that we don't become a weakened nation. That we don't become a nation who lets any little terrorist force take control of it, where any terrorist force can just bully us. We need to have a sense of patriotism, but not to the extent of post-World War II patriotism. We need to have a responsible patriotism, one in which we respect the war soldier who comes home, but one that does not respect a country that wants to essentially colonize and destroy other countries. We need to have a balance. A balance is very important because we don't want to go into useless wars like Vietnam or the Iraq wars in which no one really won. But we don't want to have a sense that we hate our soldiers and we hate our government because eventually there is going to be a war and eventually we will have to fight. And we need to have a sense of patriotism in order for a successful country. We need to have a sense of patriotism in order to live, in order to be a powerful country, in order to keep our glory. While we need to make sure we don't over-glorify, we need to make sure we don't under-glorify. That's it.